You have two choices, right? You can fall into resentment and you can get bitter, or you can fall into forgiveness and self-forgiveness as well and get better.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the show. And today is going to be a great show because we have somebody joining us today, the wealth of life experience, but he's going to talk about how you can create a flow in your life by changing your mind, changing your perspective. And it's one of her specialties. She has an incredibly interesting background. She is a survivor. That's a big part of it. She is somebody who believes in the power of the mind to change your reality. And so right now, I want to welcome Kris Ashley to the show. Kris is a coach. She's an author. She's a motivational speaker. She's the owner of a yoga company called Unite by Yoga. And she spent the past 2 decades immersed in research about spiritual teachings and practices she shares with all of her readers and all of her clients. Her book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, is available for pre-order right now, and we're going to talk about that coming up on this interview. And for more information on Kris's coaching, you can visit her at krisashley.net, and we'll have a link down below that you can get there. And to practice sliding scale online yoga with Kris from anywhere in the world, or outdoors if you like that, you can go to visit www.unitebyyoga.com. She's in Oakland. All of you people out there in Berkeley, my Berkeley people, you can check her out there as well. Great day, everyone. I'm Mike Pawlawski, former world champion quarterback, serial entrepreneur, and award-winning TV producer and host. I've lived a life dedicated to mastery through performance and mindset integration. Each week, I'll bring you the insights, strategies, and stories from some of the world's top performers to help you unlock your greatness. Whether you're an athlete aiming for the top or an executive driving your team to victory, this is where you learn how to train your greatness to become an everyday great. Now let's get after it. Kris, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to talk to you here today because you and I have got to meet over the last several weeks, which is really cool. And kind of exploring this, seeing how much we have in common, different backgrounds, but how much we have in common has been really fun.
Yeah, it has. Thank you so much for having me, Mike. I'm really excited. As you said, we connect on so many different levels. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. The things that you and I have been talking about anyway in public, so everyone else can chime in too.
Absolutely. One of the things that I want to start here, because people at home are doing this every day. The total human experience is that we get in our own way constantly. We are that negative voice in our head. We are talking to ourselves. We are creating our own problems oftentimes and being our biggest detractors, right? Rory Vaden, who's an author, calls it Mr. M, Mr. Mediocrity. And you can go through people down the line from Aristotle all the way to modern thinkers. And it's been there all the time, that self-doubt, that negativity bias. You talk about people clearing the way, helping themselves clear the path. Talk about that, because that's really a big piece of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you totally nailed it. The biggest thing holding most people back is themselves, right? Their own limiting beliefs, their doubts, their worries, their fear. Fear is a really big one. And I specialize in the law of attraction because, like you said, I believe that we create our own reality. What you focus on, you bring into your reality. And I love all those books and movies like The Secret because they brought this knowledge into the forefront, right? Into the consciousness of humanity. But so many of those books and films talk about the universe like it's just a genie in a bottle, right? You can just create your vision board or journal, and then you just kick back, ask the universe for what you want, and just wait for it. But there's a lot more to it than that. 95% of your thoughts come from your subconscious programming every single day. So that means only 5% of your day, you are consciously creating what you want. So you're sabotaging yourself 95% of the day. That is huge. And most of that core programming, by the way, happens before the age of 7. So if you don't take the time to do the work and look at that lens through which you view the world, look at your beliefs, look at repressed emotions, look at the story you tell yourself, it's going to seep into your manifesting. It's going to seep into your belief system, and you're going to end up, you might make some progress, but ultimately you're going to fall back, right, into your old patterns, into your old habits. So that's really what I focus on in my work.
That's fantastic. And it kind of goes along the lines. I was speaking with New York Times bestselling author today, Peggy McCall, and the question that she kept saying, which is great to kind of reframe her thinking, is, what do I need to believe right now?
I love that.
right? And instead of being in the midst of criticizing ourselves, it was, what do I need to believe? And you got to this point. You have, your background is interesting because you're a trauma survivor. You're a person I introduced coming in. Talk about your background and what brought you to here. Because so often when we want to go out and coach people, we want to help people, we're helping the people that we were. We're helping that person when we needed help that we wanted to be. So talk about your background.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, because I also always say we teach what we need to hear too, right? And what we needed to hear. And I think so many coaches out there, so many healers have a similar story to mine, right? They've been through trauma. So my story is, when I was 12 to 15, I went through sexual abuse at the hands of a family member. And I had this really big, tight-knit Italian family. And when they found out what happened, the family just completely split down the middle. So relatives who had been like a second mother to me were leaving me voicemails. They were writing me letters and sending them in the mail, telling me that they didn't love me anymore and I wasn't their family anymore. And cousins who had been best friends, I was no longer permitted to see. So, as a young adolescent, I didn't know how to cope with this, right? It left me with severe PTSD. It left me with all of this anger, all of this guilt that I didn't know how to cope with. I didn't have the tools at that time. And it left me with a lot of self-harming behaviors. I did a lot of drugs. I was cutting. I was lashing out in school. I was a mess. And my life really changed at the age of 17. This was in 2002 when someone handed me this book, and it completely changed my way of thinking, my way of being and moving through the world. It showed me that there's another way. And I remember so clearly as I was reading it, as I was turning these pages, it hit me that, oh my gosh, this feels like the truth. This really resonates with me. And I always like to say I was like a sleeper agent, right? Like something inside of me woke up.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it, man? I don't mean to cut you off. It's amazing that when you hear things that are true, like intuitively, instinctively, it registers with us. You go, oh, yeah. And you don't just intellectualize it, but you feel it. And you can feel it, deep in that inner chest, that same place that gets dark when you get anxiety. All of a sudden it's like, ooh, and it opens up and allows you to kind of feel through that truth that you just know is absolutely right.
Absolutely. It's like you can feel it in every cell of your being. And it's like, oh, why didn't anyone tell me this before? I didn't even know this was a possibility. Right. So after that, I just started reaching for more, and I started studying under all these teachers. I started reading all these books, attending all these workshops, and I pulled myself out of this hole. I really saw how it was changing my reality. And then as that was happening simultaneously, I watched my mother go down the opposite way. She just went down this tunnel. Her family had been split down the seams, and for her, it manifested as health. So she got very serious illnesses, but she also got all of these really weird afflictions that doctors hadn't heard of, we hadn't heard of. And so they were just giving her all these pills, and then they were giving her pills for the side effects of those pills. And then at the top of it, the height of it, she was on a fentanyl patch. She was taking Dilaudid, which is a serious narcotic. She was on all these other pills. She slept for all but a few hours at daylight. She forgot conversations we had the day prior. She fell all the time. And that lasted almost 15 years. It lasted quite a long time. And it just compounded my guilt, right? I was like, not only have I destroyed my family, but I've broken my mother. But luckily, I always like to say that she became my biggest teacher, because as I watched her go down this dark hole of depression, of illness, and I was watching myself go the other direction with all of these things I was studying and learning and putting into practice, I saw this gap just widen between us. And I saw what happens to a human body and spirit when they go down her path and when they go up my path. And I made this promise to myself that I would never allow myself to go where she went. I would always prioritize my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. And I have to this day. And that was really the pivotal turning point in my life.
That is amazing, and that is powerful. My wife has a similar story. Her brother died when she was young, and she didn't allow herself to go down that dark path that kind of surrounded her and was there for her if she wanted to take it, and she didn't. And people who can do that, people at home think of that as being mentally strong, and sometimes they want to write that off as it's just a talent, or you're just tougher, or you're just more resilient. But that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
because I think we all have that power within us. It's all about whether we're willing to accept it. And you made a great point when you said, why didn't people tell me this? Sometimes we have to go through some experiences to be ready for the teacher to appear. Sometimes the universe has to teach us something before we can hear it. And so how did you, especially under those circumstances, how did you really dial into that side of it?
Yeah, I love everything you were saying, that it's a choice, but it's also work, right? You also have to do the work. And one of the most important things that humans can do, if there's any piece of advice that I could give all of humanity, is to feel your emotions, right? I had to allow myself to really feel it. And I went through, I try every healing modality I can find, and I still do to this day. And I don't know that it was any one specific one that helped, but it was just peeling away these layers, right? And feeling everything and getting that poison out of me. And then also just changing my mind, changing my perspective around it. And like you said, your wife has, you have two choices, right? You can fall into resentment and you can get bitter, or you can fall into forgiveness and self-forgiveness as well and get better. And
that's
we all
powerful.
have that choice.
You can fall into resentment or you can fall into forgiveness. I'm taking that home with me, by the way. I'm going to use that.
I'll do it.
I promise you. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that was just really powerful. I think people at home are going to love that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, it's about doing the work and, again, like removing those blockages, right? Because all of that junk, all those emotions are energy. They're energy in motion. And when they don't have anywhere to go, when you push them down, not consciously even, most of the time we don't even realize we're pushing them down. But when you push them down, they don't have anywhere else to go but in your body, right? Where they become stuck, they become repressed emotions, and they can manifest as illness like it did with my mom, right? They say disease is dis-ease. It can manifest as you lashing out at people you project negativity onto, sometimes people you love in your life. It can cause all sorts of harm, lots of stress.
And this is a really excellent, good point, because oftentimes when people think of the law of attraction and I used to think of it, it's crystals and bells and, candles and like that, that's all the magic in it. And I am a firm believer in the placebo effect too, by the way. So if that works for you and it's placebo effect, I'm all in. I had teammates that would have issues before a game. I'll tell a great story. So I had a teammate who before a game, somehow his lucky shirt was lost. Couldn't find it. And he came up to me and he was freaking out. Oh, my lucky shirt this, my lucky shirt that. And I said, man, what's the problem? And he goes, they lost my shirt. I'm like, well, why don't you just get another shirt? And he says, no, that's my lucky shirt. Like, I don't know if I can play without that shirt. I said, I thought you were the one catching all those balls. Like, I thought you were the guy who was making them run the routes and getting open and catching those footballs. I didn't realize it was the shirt the whole time because we could have paid that shirt a whole lot less. Yeah. And he's like, man, I got to have it to be right, to get my mind right. And that's really the key. It's about getting your mind right. So what I did is I went over to my laundry bag and I had a Cal t-shirt because I always wear Cal with me. I've got it on my arm and a tattoo and I always wear it with me. And so I pulled out my Cal shirt and I said, here you go, man, this is my lucky shirt. I'm going to let you wear this for this game. And so you can have it. And he went out, he put it on, he went out that night, he caught 7 touchdown passes. He was unbelievable. He was great. And he played lights out. And after he was like, man, I can't believe you gave me, lucky shirt. I'm like, keep it for the rest of the season. It's all you. I bought that thing in the summer at the bookstore. But if it works, right? So I believe in placebo effect in a big way. And clearing your mind works. But there's more to it than that because you also have to do the work. That was enough to allow him to get out of his mental block.
Yeah.
But you also have to do the work behind it, which is what I love about what you're talking about. Because it's not just, I'm going to do this meditation and the world's going to be roses and puppies.
Right.
I'm going to do the meditation to get my mind right so that I can clear some of these emotions. You had an opportunity to hear me speak about mine. I also had PTSD around injuries from football. And that anxiety, that depression got me to a really dark place as well. And until I was able to own that and kind of experience those emotions and go back and revisit kind of the baby me who was scared from my illness as a kid, I couldn't move on. I was stuck in that spot for years. And so to be able to clear that is such a poignant piece for people at home that I think that's a really powerful piece. And it's in the book. I don't want to give away everything in the book, But how you do that, the mechanics of how you do that, and the work that you do with it is fantastic. We will have a link so that you can get the book for the pre-order for June 20th is the release again, right? So we can hit that right now. Yeah. So we're coming close. But it's in the book. Let's talk about that now, because I just talked about pain as a football player. And that emotion, bringing that in, causing pain, because we're on that work scale. I'm an athlete. You do the work, you get the result, it turns out. Well, you do the emotional work to cause yourself pain too, don't you?
You do. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it all comes back to those repressed emotions. It comes back to fear. And it's, you probably know this from your own injuries, but most people think pain happens in the body part that they're feeling it. They break their arm, it's their arm that hurts, but all pain is actually in your brain and in your nervous system, right? And the same for a broken arm, a headache, a migraine, a backache. So our nervous system can actually be programmed, and our brain can actually be programmed. So they find that people with chronic pain, and they actually found this on brain imaging studies, have rewired their brain, because they start focusing on their pain, right? There's a fear associated with their pain. And I'm sure you've experienced this too.
Absolutely.
And they get stuck in this cycle, right? The more that they fear their pain, the more that they focus on it, the more they attend to it, right? They avoid activities because of their pain. They constantly talk about their pain. They identify with their pain. It becomes their identity. And pretty soon this pain becomes chronic, and it's all they know. And they just get stuck in this cycle. But luckily you can unwind this cycle, right? You can reprogram your nervous system. You can reprogram your brain. But there's really interesting, if we talk about the law of attraction again. And by the way, I love what you said about how you thought it was all crystals, and because it's not, I hate this thing in the spiritual community that it's all about positive thinking.
Right.
It's such a trap, right? It's not, you can't just think positive in the world, right? Your perspective absolutely is important. There's so much more to it. But tying that back to pain and illness, there's something called an internal locus of control. And this means that you believe that you are in control of your own destiny, of your own life. You create your own luck. Your thoughts create your reality. And Western doctors who study chronic pain patients have actually found that people with a strong internal locus of control are less likely to experience chronic pain. And when they do experience pain, it's far less, versus people with an external locus of control, those people that think everything that happens to them is due to outside forces. They're always blaming other people and the environment and other things. They think it's luck. They think they're just this victim in the world. And those are the people that actually experience far worse pain. And this is scientifically proven. It's really fascinating.
It is fascinating. There's a couple of points in there that I will, as a sufferer of chronic pain for a long, long time after football, there's a couple of things in there kind of, I'll add an edge to what you're talking about, is that this doesn't mean you're not experiencing pain.
Absolutely.
You are experiencing pain. And if there's something structurally wrong, you should fix the structural issues if possible.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Absolutely.
Yeah. But what happens, because I can speak to this personally. I broke my neck and I played my last 10 games in the XFL with a broken neck, with a torn rotator cuff in my throwing shoulder, and with torn cartilage in my left knee. And so if there's pain, usually there's something wrong with it. But oftentimes, now you have that pain and your body starts to guard, is the term that they use. It guards that pain because it doesn't want you to experience whatever it is in the joint. And you're not going to experience that pain at the locality, as you pointed out. But that dysfunction at the locality makes your nervous system go, oh, wait, I've got to freeze this. I've got to hold this. And you start to create this tension and this stress. And now your nervous system is so focused on that pain, it becomes hypervigilant. And this translates not just from pain. We'll talk about this emotionally too, because it happens emotionally as well. But it translates from that pain into your neuromuscular skeleton, where it starts tensing those muscles all the time. And the muscle tension is what causes the majority of your pain. Because I know for me in my neck, it freezes my neck, and I get those tension headaches that now run up and around the curl in my head. I used to talk about, I'm only going to make it to 53 and a half. That was part of my identity because of all of my football injuries. And I knew this. I was like, I'm not 53 and a half. That's what I'm done. I'm over. That's my expiration date. I used to talk about that all the time. And I finally got my neck done. And once I got the structural changes, then I had to work on improving my brain. And that's really where the huge transformation came in, is from that transformation in the neck, getting the structural fixed first, and then moving into the emotional piece of it. And so this chapter absolutely hit home for me. And there's such knowledge and wisdom in Kris's book. I highly recommend you get it. But it is a powerful understanding that you need to have. And so now you talk about exercises in the book. I'm just going to give one that I saw it in the book, and I'm like, that's exactly what I do. I will sit at my desk, and I'll start to feel the headaches, or I'll start to feel a tension in my neck. I just give that deep breath and let it out, and let those muscles relax, and all of a sudden, pain goes away. Because that's my emotion. That's my body trying to guard.
Yeah. And I love how you said that after you got the structure fixed in your neck, you had to work it in your mind, because your mind probably hadn't caught up, right?
Still on guard, yeah.
It's so easy for people who have gone through surgeries and gotten something fixed structurally to keep experiencing that pain because it's programmed into them. It's like if you've ever had panic attacks before, it just amplifies everything else, right? And, you know, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having a heart attack, or I'm nauseous, but really it's just your anxiety causing all of those symptoms. And yeah, I completely agree.
No, I think you nailed it. And that takes it to that next point that I was talking about, is that hypervigilance. Yeah. Because this is not just a physical causing pain thing, but it causes emotional pain as well. And you were going right down that road. So you and I are right on the same page right now in terms of where we're thinking, in that you start thinking about an item and you get anxiety. And then that anxiety causes what I call what ifing. What if this happens? What if that happens? And our negativity bias starts to raise. And then we see everything as dark and gloomy. And then what if? And it gets worse and worse. And our nervous system starts staying hypervigilant. And then when you stay in this for a long time, I did it around my injuries. You stay in it for a long time. Now your nervous system can't relax. It can't let go. And so the most minor of things can shoot you through the roof emotionally. Your anxiety can jump.
Exactly. You're in that sympathetic state, right? You're in that fight, flight, or freeze. And that's why I love that you use the example of just like relaxing. It's about bringing yourself back into that parasympathetic state, right? And there's so many little things you could do like that, like anything with your vagus nerve, anything that's just going to release that tension. And it's so important to do that every single day, because that tension can build. Even if you're not experiencing trauma or pain, just our busy modern lives, you know, we're so on the go these days that it's so important to just take even 15 minutes to just do anything that just brings you back down into that state. And you were also speaking to something else, made me think of fear. Well, you were talking about the what ifs, where fear is just this, it's an illusion, right? It's false evidence appearing real. It's a story about a possible future that doesn't exist, that you've made up. And so much of this work is about realizing that, right? And it's difficult to do, especially when you're up in that tense, anxious place. But it's about shifting your mind about that so that you can see what's actually happening in front of you.
Again, so right here, you and I are so on the same page right now. It is so awesome, because the fear, which is right where I wanted to go with that fear, oftentimes it's about reality. Yeah, I had it about pain, but then you also start to get anxious, which then makes you think, what if people see that I'm anxious? Right. What if other people recognize, which gets back to your book again, because you talk about us, how other people see us, and our view of other people, how our view of other people is just what we're projecting onto them. It's not what they are. It's our perspective of them. And so it gets into this, you're creating your own reality. And this is a huge part of the law of attraction. You create your own reality in the way that you think, the way that you believe, and the things that you do then to back that up. And the same way, if you're being negative, you're creating a negative reality out there. And so I think oftentimes too, our reality and that fear comes from, I want to project myself as I want people to see me. So much of what we're doing is this play acting about how I want other people to see me. I'm going a little off the rails here, but like this projection of fear is all created from thought. You are the ultimate creator of your own reality. And you talk about this so well in the book.
Exactly. And it's funny because while you're so focused on what everyone is thinking of you, you know what they're focused on? What you're thinking of them. Right?
Exactly.
So, no, everyone's all wrapped up in their own head, right? In their own stuff. Like you're so focused on, you know, what are they thinking of me, or taking something personally, or how does this affect me? And they're just thinking the same thing. How did this affect me? Right? They're not thinking about you. And you made an interesting point about how we project onto other people. And it kind of goes the other way around too, where people show up or behave in the way that we expect them to. And there's some psychological thing about it where if you expect someone to be cold or unfriendly or aloof, or you perceive them to be that way, that's the way they're going to show up for you, because that's the side that you are focusing on, right? And it just goes back to the law of attraction. But even if we take it away from the spiritual side, it's what you focus on becomes your reality, because everyone has these different sides to themselves. And you can focus on someone's negative side, like you were just talking about focusing on negativity, or you could focus on a positive side. And, you know, there's probably 50 different people in your life that see 50 different versions of you, right? And they're all different than the version of you that you see of yourself. So we really do project out into the world, and that's what gets reflected back to us. So we really do create our reality on every single level.
That is absolutely right. I love that. Your reputation exists separately in everybody else's mind. And then your opinion of yourself is separate as well, right? And so we're so worried about how we're going to tailor that for everybody to see us as this big overall perspective, and it's not. Everybody has their own individual view, and they're all going to see you based on their background, their circumstances, their history, what they were drinking at the time that they met you. Like, there's a million things that is going to affect their perception of you.
Exactly. It's your belief system, your lens, and you nailed it. It's everything that you've gone through in your life, right? The kids who made fun of you on the playground, the boss who says you're not good enough, that crush who rejected you in 6th grade, like all of these things form your lens, and all the good things too, right? It's easy to just talk about the bad things, but our lens tends to tell us if the world is this safe place or this scary place, right? If people can be trusted, or if we always have to be on the defense, ready to be attacked. And it allows us to either think from this place of the safety, ease, abundance, or of the opposite of fear and doubt and worry. And that lens shapes everything you see around you. It's how you interpret every single event, from illness to other people, the whole gamut.
Yeah, and this goes back to, if you want to talk about the scientific side of it, right? This is the reticular activating system. This is you expect something, and so your mind, because it has to sort things, it has to categorize things, because there's so much input around you all day long that if you had to attend to everything that you were seeing all the time, you'd be insane. And so your mind has to have a way of categorizing that. The reticular activating system is that way, from all the inputs of categorizing it and giving you a simple flow of the things you can handle. So if you think this person's going to be a jerk, that's the way you interpret it, then that's what you're going to see in their behavior. If you think they're going to be wonderful and pleasant, then that's what you're going to see. And you're going to accept things that maybe don't fit that schema, because you have the schema already in place about what this person is. And so your brain is categorizing it and creating your own reality that way.
Yeah, your mind is made up. And just to bring it down to like a super real world example, I just got a new Bronco on Friday. I don't know if you saw it yesterday.
Congratulations.
But we ordered it 2 years ago, and it was just such a backup. But we wanted this Bronco so bad. And then pretty much everywhere we looked, we saw a Bronco. They were everywhere. We're like, oh, there's a crazy waiting list. We can't get one of these cars. But all of a sudden we see 50 of them when we're driving like to my in-laws or driving to work. And they're just everywhere. And it's because our brains, my husband and I's brains, were focused on a Bronco, right? So out of all the cars we see, those are the ones that stand out to us. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, you get dialed into it. And as a result, that's how you end up with the group of friends that you end up with. That's how you are finding the people, the like-minded. They say birds of a feather flock together. It's because that's what your brain is doing. Your brain is putting it together. We want that connection. We always want connection. And we'll talk about connection in a second. But we want that connection. And so our brain is finding the way that helps us to connect to the things that matter to us most. And so it is dialing it in. But you talk about connection in your book and how important it is as well. Talk about connection with people, with yourself, kind of the way you talk about it.
Well, are you talking about forgiveness? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Connecting to yourself, getting through forgiveness. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're on
I didn't
the right
want to take you down that path. Yeah, that path. Sorry if I was
No,
amorphous.
it's all
in my
good.
lead.
It's important. So yeah, I mean, forgiveness is so important, right? Because we were talking about this earlier. You can get bitter and fall into resentment, or you forgive and you get better. And this actually fits in really well with what you were saying. We tend to see the people who have hurt us in some kind of way as monsters. And it's exactly what you were just saying. Like, we focus in on this. And we think we run everything through this lens because, like you said, we've already made up our mind about them. So everything they've said, everything they've done, the clothes they're wearing, the way they carry themselves, it gets wrapped up in this story, right? It just disgusts us. They're this monster. But chances are they're not that monster, right? Because again, everyone has all these different facets to them. No one is truly good or truly bad. Bad people do good things. Good people do bad things. No one's inherently one or the other. So if you can learn to change your mind, right, and you can learn to change these monsters into teachers, then your world will completely shift. And it's not about excusing anyone's behavior. It's about releasing your own anger, your own resentment, your rage, your hatred, whatever it is, because that stuff sits in the pit of your stomach, right? And it creates disease, like we were talking about. It creates tension. So it's about shifting your perspective so you can heal, right? You never have to talk to the person. You don't have to say anything to them. So, we switch them to teachers in our minds by recognizing the good they've done. Maybe good for you, maybe good for someone else, maybe good for the world. We recognize things that we admire about that person. There's probably something you admire about them. You think about what other people in their life admire or see in them. And if you're at like that point, we're like, there is nothing good about this person. They are the biggest bitch in the world, right? They're terrible. Then you say, okay, how have they helped me grow, right? Because maybe they've helped me realize that I need better boundaries. Maybe they've shown me how I want to treat people, how I don't want to treat people, right? Maybe they've shown me ways to not take things personally and so on. So it's all tied together, right? It's all about shifting your perspective, releasing all that junk you're holding on to.
There's always a lesson in anything as long as you're willing to work for it and to look for it. That is, for people in the academic world, and kids these days are getting it all the time, that is the growth mindset. If you can grow from a situation, no matter how bad it is, then it wasn't really a negative situation because you're getting something out of it in the end. I think it was Benjamin Franklin who had the quote. He said, "Failure isn't really a failure if you learn from it." And that's, the growth mindset goes way back to when you can read about it all the way back to the Greeks and the Stoics and like everybody back in the days, the Romans, who were just, the human condition has been with us the whole time. And we sit there and we think fear, anxiety, it isolates us. It keeps us disconnected. But forgiveness allows us to reconnect. And that connection is what helps us kind of get peace in our lives and move forward and to be positive. And in that vein, you have some tools for people to use in the book. And I don't want to give them all away, but there's a couple of things. Yoga, obviously, a big one for you. So talk about how people can use some of these modalities within the mindset. And we're not giving everything away here because you guys have to go get this book. It's awesome. It will change your mind. It will change your life. But talk about just a couple of the modalities that people can use and how they can use it within the framework of your book and what you're teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of different exercises. I love yoga. I'm a yoga teacher. I've taught people how to teach yoga. I have a yoga studio. Yoga is a really powerful tool that allows you to get back into your body. There's this amazing book called The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know if you've heard of it, but...
Oh, I've heard of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It talks about how yoga allows trauma survivors to start to feel safe inside of their own body. And when we're practicing yoga, we're moving energy. And remember, all of those repressed emotions are energy. So sometimes things that have been stuck for a long time kind of shake loose and bubble up to the surface. So, I mean, I have bawled my eyes out through so many yoga classes, and I've had people do the same in my classes because sometimes it's this deep wound. Sometimes they're just working through a current stressor in their life. But things happen when you find movement, right? When you move your body in very specific ways. So things like yoga, things like dynamic meditation, things like TRE, if you can get to a point where you exhaust your body and mind, then the emotions flow freely. And not all exercise does it. There's certain modalities like that, but it's about getting out of your own way, which I think is something you said in the very first 2 minutes of this whole episode, right? You have to get out of your own way so those things can flow freely.
Yeah, get rid of those blocks that are holding you up. And that's a huge piece of it. I think as well, just from a mechanical side of it, the exercise piece of yoga, the physical piece of yoga, it's the number one prescription by doctors across the world for anxiety, depression, and all the mental health issues that you face, is to get active, get blood flow to the brain, and start making that happen just from a medical perspective. So I think that that's a fantastic practice. Not only that, yoga has been a part of the mindfulness session within the Indian culture forever. And it's a piece where you connect mind, body, spirit all together in the same place, and 3 separate instances there as well. Not that I'm a yoga practitioner, I'm talking to an expert here, so I'm way out of my water here.
No, you're absolutely right, though. I hear so many people say like, oh, I'm not flexible, I can't do yoga. It's like, yoga is a path inward, right? It's a moving meditation. And flexibility and muscle tone are just happy side effects that happen with a regular practice. I was the most unflexible person in the room when I started practicing yoga. I couldn't even touch my knees, let alone my toes, when I was doing a forward fold. But it comes as things start to open up. And it's interesting because as your body starts to open up, all of those repressed emotions start to flow more freely, right? There's less tension in your body. Now, that's not to say the most flexible person in the world has no problems, but something happens in your body the more you find your way onto your mat. And it's just, I don't even know how to say it other than it's this magical thing that happens on your yoga mat. You get to let go of all of that armor that you put on, those masks you put on, right? Because we all wear masks. You have a mask for the grocery store, a mask for Thanksgiving dinner with your family, a mask for work.
Yes.
And armor is great because it can protect you, but if you never take it off, it gets stiff, it gets rusty, it gets stuck. So it's about coming home to yourself, right? Removing all those labels society places on top of you, those labels you might place on top of yourself, a friend, a parent, a partner, a boss, an employee, whatever it is, and just getting down to that core that's within you, because that's who you really are. The rest of this is an avatar. This isn't who you really are. Your body's not who you are.
I love that. And that then kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, when you get hypervigilant over an injury, you get hypervigilant emotionally for the anxiety, your nervous system only has so much capacity. And I think when it is worrying about your body and your stiffness and soreness, and it's worrying about the anxiety, and it's worried about everything else going on in your life and your stressors from daily work, and there's only so much capacity you can handle there until it just kind of locks up. And I think yoga gives you an opportunity to channel some of that, to release some of that, and to direct some of that to where it has to be. And so it renews the capacity for your nervous system. That's my take on it as I look at it.
Absolutely. And you're right. They say that people who are healthy have a million different dreams. People who are unhealthy have one dream, right? It's just to get their health back. Because when you're not healthy, when you have chronic pain, when you have a chronic illness, that becomes your world. Your world just shrinks, right? I saw it happen with my mother. You've experienced it, and it's all you can focus on. So you have to work on that, and then everything else just opens up.
And part of this, and going back to kind of where we started, is it gives you, I don't know if gives you the right word, resiliency. You become resilient and you're able to handle stressors more often. Talk about that, because you were resilient in your early life. We talked about a trauma survivor. But then by doing all of these practices and learning all of these new skills, you also become more resilient as a person and more flexible, and all those things tied together. So you get better through the combination of all these things. Talk about how that worked in your life.
Yeah, totally. And, that's not to say that things aren't going to happen also, right? Things are always going to happen. But like you said, each time you're better and better prepared. I think I've recently gone through another trauma a few years ago where I really had to get my resiliency back where people were spreading all these lies about me online. And so much growth happened from that in building resiliency. And I realized, and I'm sure that you know this because of like the fame that you've experienced, the more you put yourself out there and the bigger you get, the more rejection you risk, right? Because people are always going to be out there. We've all seen internet trolls. Not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to love you. Not everyone's going to resonate with you or even say nice things about you.
Yeah, it's not just the more rejection you kind of anticipate, you're going to get it. There's no two ways about it. The more that you are out there, some people believe that they have to knock somebody else down to protect themselves. That's the way they protect their ego, is by being small.
And yes, and they are coming from a place of their own pain and their own fear.
Yes.
Right. And that's where ego.
That's where I wanted you to go with this. Yes.
Yeah. They're coming from a place of their own pain and fear. And if someone is attacking you like that, you have to consider the source, right? Who is this person? Is their opinion valuable to you? Do you care about what they say? Like, are they trying to help your life? Are they coming at you with a compassionate way of trying to give you information that might help you grow? Or are they spewing their poison onto you? Are they coming with anger, with jealousy, with hate, with rage? And if it's the latter, it's not about you, it's about them, like you were just saying. And taking their opinion seriously is not worth the time of day. It's about trusting that you know who you are, standing in your own truth. You know how you treat other people. You know what your intentions are, and you can't please everyone, and that's okay. And I think in today's day and age, it's become, a lot of people claim to be victims of things, right? A lot of people blame outside forces, but you give your power away when you do that, right? Yeah. And you said it so wonderfully earlier that from every adversity, you can grow. And then it becomes not this terrible thing. Everything happens for you. Life is happening for you, not to you. So that you can grow, you can level up, you can learn those lessons. You can become this greater version of yourself, this kinder, more empathetic, smarter, stronger version of yourself. So when you change your mind and think about how everything is actually happening for you, and there's this gift inside of everything, it's like nothing can bring you down.
That's exactly right. And I love the fact, because I get it all the time. I've got the YouTube channel where I'm talking about football, and I'll get the trolls on there. And I do TV broadcasts, radio broadcasts, and I get people all the time telling me what they think of me. And so it's super wonderful. But what I come at that angle from, and I think you put it perfectly, is you have to think about where they're coming from. Are they just coming to you with criticism and that's it? Or are they offering a solution or looking for a solution even? Right. I'll have my dad one time when I did a broadcast early in my TV career, came on and said, "Michael, that was great, but what's cover 2?" Because I had gotten really technical in my quarterback language of what I was talking about. And I was a subject matter expert, but I had to remember that I was talking to people who weren't subject matter experts, which is why you have analysts on a football game. Otherwise, everybody would just watch it. Right. And so that struck me is, oh, that's right. People at home need to understand what I'm talking about. And I have to try to give them the whole concept, but give them at a level where I'm describing it rather than just labeling it. And so he was giving me solutions. He was being constructive. Meanwhile, I may have somebody else get on there that played 2 years of high school football telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, when somebody runs power or whatever, maybe to get technical. And I'll be like, this guy doesn't even deserve my time. I don't need to talk to him. But if they're coming at you with, hey, this is what I heard and I don't get it. And oftentimes that'll be the way it's phrased. I don't understand what you're saying. They're looking for a solution, and you just have to find the question, and then you can offer that solution. And oftentimes, I can't tell you how many times a person who came at me with criticism in that way, that I then took a moment to say, what are they really looking for here? And then I answered the question. Instead of being negative and snapping back and becoming a troll myself, I said, oh, well, this is what they're looking for. Let me give them that. And I have gotten these effusive, long paragraphs about, man, that is great. I didn't understand it. I see what you're saying. Like, whatever it is, they come back and all of a sudden you open up because you've made that connection. Right. And it's so important. And really, that's the small people who are being hateful aren't worth your time, but then there's a group of people who are just looking for that connection.
I love that story so much. And it's really that people want to be seen and heard, right? And even sometimes when people write me comments and they're like a little bit on the edge, like they're not, hey, explain this to me. They're like a little bit critical. And I don't do this all the time, but I actually take the time to be like, oh, well, what I was saying is, and here's this context. I get that same response. It's like they just soften, right? They just melt into a puddle because they just wanted to be seen and heard. That's all everyone wants. Yeah.
And they think that nowadays, if it bleeds, it leads. If it's negative, you get more clicks. That they think that that's the way to approach people. And quite honestly, and the whole point of your book is we have the opportunity to build a better world just in the way that we act. Talk about how our actions can then affect everybody as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we tend to think that all of these people outside of us are separate from ourselves, but we are all connected, right? Everyone you meet is actually a reflection of you. Right? They say people who trigger you are showing you unhealed aspects of you. But I'm a total quantum physics nerd, and quantum physics backs all this up, which is the coolest part about it, that it's scientifically backed up, that there is this quantum field, we'll just call it, like this big tapestry, and anything that you reflect out into it gets reflected back to you. And that's essentially the law of attraction, or the reticular activation system, and it works on an individual level and it works on a collective level. And it's all about emotion, right? Emotion is how you manifest things, how these things show up. It's like they say the universe is like the Facebook algorithm. Whatever you get emotional about, it sends you more of. So if we think about that on a collective scale, whatever people are getting emotional about, and when they're canceling people, when they're lashing out at hate and anger, when they're starting wars, when they're just rude to someone, all of this gets sent out into this collective quantum field of consciousness, and it all gets reflected back. So that's why I think cancel culture is so toxic, because when you send out hate and you make people feel humiliated and shamed and guilty, and you step on people, the world is going to get more of that, right? Quantum physics says that what one person does on one side of the world deeply affects what someone else does. It's called entanglement. So your actions don't live alone in this vacuum. You know, we are all connected.
We all want control, and we all have control. We just don't realize it. And that's the funny part, is that we are always searching for control, that locus of control that you talk about, inner control. We want that in our lives. And that is part of what drives our fear, that control. We have it if we take it. Sometimes you got to let your hands off the wheel and it goes a lot smoother, and just be positive about what you're doing, which is a pretty cool concept. We haven't talked a ton. You and I haven't talked a ton about quantum physics. I went through a phase in my life when I was playing where I was studying religions, every religion, from Native American religions to ancient Eastern religions, Christianity, kind of the whole process of it.
Very cool.
And I grew up Christian, grew up Catholic, and I so I'm from that faith. But I believe that it's our way of quantifying that quantum field. God is real. He's out there. It's in that quantum field, or it's whatever it may be for you. God comes to you as you are able to receive him. When the student's ready, the teacher will come, and he comes when it's ready. Just recently, I reconnected with my father, who was a huge piece of my life. Like, he was my mentor. He was my best friend. He was so important to me. And I was literally able to visualize and see that connection through meditation, through like this healing journey for me. And I hadn't really mourned him when he died, 2005, excuse me. And I hadn't mourned him for years and years and years. Just recently, I reconnected with him in that. And that's my belief, through that quantum field. And now I can literally see him, feel him every single day. I can connect with my dad. And it's super powerful. So super deep. And this is the thoughts, and this is the places that you'll go with Kris's book. I mean, it's just, her thinking is deep. Her tools are great. The skills that you'll learn, the teaching you get from it. And on top of that, she's not just a teacher and not just a lecturer. She's a coach. She wants to help you improve your life. And so I got so much out of this. This was fantastic. This is why I just wanted to have you on. I knew I was going to love having you on. You know, you and I are so right here in terms of the way that we think together. And I just love talking to you every time, because it's so, like, it's so thought-provoking every time we talk.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we talk about connection, right? You and I couldn't have been from more different worlds.
Right.
And you just resonate with certain people. You just connect with certain people. And I love everything you shared about your dad. That's really powerful. I'm going to have to ask you more about that later. That's really
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be a whole nother podcast at some time. I'll come on your podcast and we'll talk about it. It'll be great. You guys can find Kris online, krisashley.net. Again, if you want the healing yoga, it's unitebyyoga.com, and change your mind to change your reality. It will be available. You have to get a copy. We just brushed the surface here today. It's like you got an iceberg today. You saw the top of it, but there's so much of it underneath the surface that is going to change your life for real. Kris, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. It's been really fun.
Absolutely. Everybody at home, thank you. Make sure you share this out, because every time you touch somebody, you create that positive effect that Kris was talking about, and we can create our own reality. Being more positive, sending it out there, the ripple effect and the entanglement that Kris was talking to you about, you can do that by sharing this out. Change somebody's day, be positive in somebody's life. I want you to go out and live every day great, because that's how you create an everyday great life and a great life overall. I appreciate you watching today. I'm Mike Pawlawski, and I'll talk to you guys later.